A very good evening and a warm welcome to Capital Sports 3.0. I am your co-host for this evening. I have three fabulous, beautiful and very intelligent co-hosts. I'm very, very lucky for that because I can sit back and listen to them talk, and that's a good thing. But we're going to be nice, short, sharp and directly to the point tonight because we have an awful lot going on. Of course, we have just finished the Australian Open where it was kind of a Slavic Grand Slam, I guess you could call it, and that was pretty good. Of course, Novax, he continued on his march towards legendary status and did so without his dad for reasons we're going to explain on the show. And of course, Olympic bands talking all about who should be at the Olympics and who shouldn't be at the Olympics. Of course, that's a massive, let's just say, fire discussion, and we'll get to that as well. We're going to speak about who wants what player to go to their club this transfer window, because of course, the transfer window is closing in a couple of days, so you got to get your bids in right now. So I'm going to go straight away. And also we're going to have a talk about as well. There's a huge fight last night between a 38-year-old and a 31-year-old. And it seemed to catch a lot of people's attention. It did very, very well. And I think actually we'll start off with that just to keep Isolt nice and happy. So before I bring the rest of the guys in, I'll play this video and I'll just show you. It was a pretty savage, pretty rough fight. I watched part of it today and I read it all this morning and it was absolutely sensational. Isolt watched it, so she'll start off the show telling us exactly what it was like. Now, Isolt, welcome to you, to Keane and to Andrew. Isolt, start off with that huge fight. We would say, in most terms, Beterbiev should be retired, especially at that weight, 38 years of age. He's dragging the life out of himself. Of course, he's from Dagestan, originally in Russia. He's done very, very well, of course, going to Canada. 19, was that the 20th win or that was the 19th win, Isolt?
19th. So he is a knockout merchant, which is probably why his career has such longevity. Because Beterbiev has been a fighter who has made his name essentially in being not only unstoppable, but he stops everyone who goes in to the ring with him. And he went up against Anthony Yarde, a young man with very little amateur pedigree, but has been a huge knockout merchant as well. So I think everyone billed this as someone is going down in this fight. And in terms of Yarde has had two losses, one in Russia, when he travelled there, and against Kovalov, and the other against Lyndon Arthur, who strangely, in the fight where Yarde previously lost, he lost due to Lyndon Arthur's absolutely exceptional jab. So he never got the chance to get in and show his power. And I think last night was, for a fight that only went to 8 rounds, so obviously didn't go the distance, it was just enthralling, because at a lot of times Yarde seemed up and very much on top of Beterbiev, and then he got quite a bad cut to his right eye, and it wasn't even so much the cushion itself was quite small, but the swelling was quite significant and gradually getting worse and worse. And I think what made last night's fight so enjoyable was not just the intensity that was literally there for the entire 8 rounds. You could have seen it going any way, but the fact that when it came down to it, his corner, who a lot of people are very critical of Yarde's corner because they go on about various things they do in camp and also what they don't do in camp, in particular sparring. And to a lot of people, they would be of the view that Yarde might be better placed with another coach for his in terms of his development, given his lack of amateur pedigree. But last night, when it came down to it, his corner protected him. And that's what really matters in the sport of boxing, that your corner is not brave for you, because Yarde was certainly not only brave, he was certainly doing exceptionally well during the fight. And I think for Beterbiev, age, talk about 38 years young, I think, when you look at him last night. And the other thing at the end of it, and I am waxing lyrical because I really did love the fight, the rest of the card was an absolute mess. And this fight actually took place, and I don't know if this is covered in a lot of the commentary people were reading online, but I will say Beterbiev at the end, his reaction said it all. This mattered to him. It also showed, I think, that he was concerned about Yard as a potential like upset to him, because he obviously realised how Yard was doing through the fight, because his reaction at the end was very much a man who was delighted to have this win and obviously must have been on some level concerned. But before the fight started, the fight took place quite late in the evening, because we had to deal with the absolute farce that was Jake Paul and Tommy Fury in the ring first to promote their fight in Dubai. And I would just say, when you have a fight of
Not
this
Dubai, in
quality,
Saudi Arabia, isn't it?
Saudi Arabia, my apologies.
Yeah.
They when you have a fight of this quality that's pushed back and delayed significantly so you can promote a YouTuber's fight, it really takes an evening. I don't think it's fair on the main event, which was a spectacular feat of boxing. The undercard did not live up to it. The undercard was quite poor, but this was worth the wait.
Okay. Moving straight on to the big story of, well, today, I guess. It's now tomorrow already there. Novak Djokovic, but the build-up to it was pretty contentious. He was abused throughout the tournament. People were screaming at him, telling him to go home. Even when he's playing Andrei Rublev, fans were shouting, "Send him home, Andrei! Send him home, Andrei!" And I think that they were actually the Ukrainian fans, which is a really weird time. It's the weirdest tournament. It was a toxic tournament in many ways. We predicted last week. I said last week, Sabalenka is going to go very, very far into this, and I said the organisers of the tournament are going to be hating tennis after this. But one thing that came up, of course, was I'm going to ask you all a very, very quick round on this. This, of course, was Novak Djokovic's father. You see him there, just sort of standing in the middle with the kind of stripes on his shoulder, not with the Z, but there were fans who he posed with fans, or they with him, shall we say, Serbian fans who basically are Australian Serbs, even more hardcore, and they want to sort of like get in on the whole act. Cian, start with you. I mean, there's times when people take pictures with people they shouldn't be taking pictures with. Was this one of them, or has it just been all overblown and a big Z of nothing?
I just think it was probably badly timed, given what's gone on in Ukraine over the last 12 months. Just very, very badly timed. And I think Novak Djokovic's father seems to want to get involved in controversy, wants to stir it up. There's an awful lot of fathers of professional athletes over the last number of years that want to get involved. John Fury springs to mind, and Conor McGregor's father, Tony, springs to mind immediately. So I think it's just a word, or I think Novak just needs to have a word with his father. I know he was kicked out of the tournament venue, but I really think it just needs a word from Novak to just, would you kindly step away for the next 6 months and let me do what I'm supposed to be doing, and not bring it into a sideshow all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't warranted, and you can see as Artemis, like he broke down crying after the match. And I think there was so much pressure on him. I mean, there was so much, last year, of course, we covered it. He wasn't there, and we criticized it, like, Jesus Christ, I mean, and we criticized the whole mess of it, because there were other players as well who were basically arrested and thrown out of Australia. So, who'd been there for a while, but because the terms changed, or the laws changed, and they were victimized. Isold, on that, I mean, do you think that, again, how was that viewed, for example, in Ireland? What do people think of it? Do you think it's a bit too much, this whole flag issue?
No, I think it'd be different if this was someone who innocently had gotten a photo and not been from so near to the region to know the significance. And that means there's no excuse. It would be like an Irish person getting in a picture with a Pakistani flag, or the Palestinian flag in the background. We would all know the significance and what that was suggesting. It wasn't just an innocent thing in the background. It would be to do with something specific. And I think this is the issue here, is that Novak's dad, he can't feign ignorance as to the significance of the Z in the photo, or the significance of the flag. He's aware of what the message that is being conveyed. And that's the difficulty here. And I think it was quite evident, whether it was evident that Novak was necessarily annoyed with his father, but he was clearly frustrated that this was a situation that was being brought up, because obviously it was yesterday as opposed to today, but it was a hugely significant day in his career. And not only that, but with everything that happened with the Australian Open last year, the last thing he needed was any further controversy, and on an entirely different area. But this wasn't controversy of his own making. And I think that's what made it so frustrating, is that Novak wasn't the one pictured here, but yet his father has essentially brought this upon him on what is a huge event and huge stage for him and a huge career milestone. And I just think there isn't any excuse. I don't think you can justify. It's not someone jumping in a photo and not knowing the significance. When you look at the photo, there's a stopping moment where you see what the people around you are wearing. You are fully aware of what the significance is. And at that point, you need to think, oh, my son is playing in a major tournament. This is definitely going on social media. Let me stop and think. Like, there's no excuse whatsoever.
Andrew, I'm going to start off with, I mean, we've had that before where people getting pictures taken at the wrong time and with the wrong place. And we covered before, of course, footballers and getting set up and so on.
Yeah.
Do you think that there didn't seem to be any problem with, for example, with people getting pictures taken with, like as I mentioned, Doug Apolov, the last week, the Alexander Dogopolov, the ex-tennis player from Ukraine, who then joined volunteer for the army, and he was complaining about Andrew Rublev being there and of Russian flags and Russian players, and yet he was quite happy to get his photo taken holding a Bandera banner. I mean, should we just ban all flags from all stadiums? Is that where we are right now?
Well, if people aren't able to understand the very, very basics of what Kieran and he sort of just mentioned, that Djokovic is father knew full well the significance and the potential ramifications of taking a picture with symbols, with flags like this. If people aren't capable of making those decisions, unfortunately, I think that's the stage we're at, which is ridiculous in itself. But there's absolutely zero need for Djokovic's father to pose for pictures. We know full well that there are a lot of cultural, historical links. I guess there's a certain sympathy on a basic level between Serbs and Russians. We know that they are they're friendly people towards each other. But taking pictures like that, you know full well what's going to happen. Quite frankly, I think he's an idiot. He's put more pressure on his son, just for that alone, yet alone the political ramifications of it. People use flags because they know that they're going to. They use flags, they use symbols because they know it's going to have a picture taken of it. They know a meal is going to be made of it. And we go beyond what the actual issue is, where in this situation we've had, well, like you mentioned, we've had issues of flags being flown in matches between Ukrainian and Russian players. And symbols are, it's the effect of symbols that people need to understand more than what they actually are themselves. You should be able to be proud of your country. If you're there watching a Russian player, you should be able to wave a Russian flag, say, look, because I'm Russian or because I'm supporting this player, I should be able to show that. But unfortunately, you also know full well it's not as simple as that. And if people aren't capable of understanding it, unfortunately, I think we might be at the stage where we have to say zero flags, and then we don't get into these arguments and embroilments left, right, centre. It's sad, but I think that's where we're at.
I mean, we mentioned last week they had to do that between Celtic and Rangers, where Celtics fans brought in Palestinian flags and Rangers fans brought in Israel flags, and that was just insane. And I mean, again, last week, as Rublev said, there was no problem having the Ukrainian flag there hanging over, which is very strange, hanging over the hoardings courtside. He didn't bother with that. He just didn't like the abuse he was getting, the verbal abuse,
yeah.
The level of homophobic abuse that was being given towards him. And I mean, it increased during the tour. It was just insane. But there was another interesting one before we round up this part. Another gentleman, Zoran Pavlovich, this guy here, he was removed for a while and then let back in. He's an American Serb, and of course, he is a super fan of Novak Djokovic. He travels as many places as he can to watch him play. He always wears Z. However, again, it is a case of, he has his own line of clothes, the Z line. But this also, Isolt, wasn't a good look. And it looks like he's hamming it up, and he'll probably get a lot of sales as well from Serbs and people who are, not anti-Russia.
Clever marketing, I suppose, to an extent. And I think the issue is you are defined by the company you keep. So from Djokovic's point of view, you do not want this huge milestone to be tarred by this. And this is what has happened. And I think at some point you need to look at the people around you and go, right, like maybe tournaments need to start looking at the people coming with him and their entourage and say, actually, they're not the message we want sent from our events, as opposed to, not Novak, we're happy to have you. We don't want this message being given. And I suppose I do want to clarify, I know when we've talked previously about the Olympics and other big tournaments, the World Cup as well, I have been very emphatic on the point that I think teams and players and athletes have a significant role in using their platform to promote good views and images of the world, and to make good statements. I have a huge issue where you're allowing people, and in this instance, to give really negative statements at events and to overshadow the good of what is going on in sport. And I think in this instance, that's the problem, because it creates a very negative opinion of the tournament. The tournament has been marred in a whole lot of difficulties for the last few years. And I think for Novak, it's sad that this is what people will be coming away talking about it. And it's interesting because in the context of the World Cup, we actually came away at the end of the World Cup, despite all we said, talking positively about football. And yet at the end of the Australian Open, we're coming away with negative discussions about the person who has won it by virtue of association. And I just think it's a really bad look for the tournament, and it's disappointing because it's a big week for tennis.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. The tennis season starts then, and it didn't as well as it could have. Cian, that continued on. Like this guy's over, and of course, we also had then the situation with Aryna Sabalenka. I mean, she, when she first first made the Grand Slam main tour main draw. Excuse me, I should know that. In 2018, she's playing Ashley Barty, who of course is now due a baby, and or she's having a baby, and Sabalenka was being laughed at and mocked for her grunts when she was serving. It was great to see her win, but a lot of people were also asking questions that she looked a bit too beefed up as well. But I think that was more angled because she was from Belarus, or maybe it was just the common view.
Could have been just a common view. I think she deserved to win it, no question of that. And I think she was extremely happy to win it. Had probably a mixed tournament, played some good stuff, played some mediocre stuff, but in the finish up, deserving of her victory. Very interesting that you suggest that she was beefed up. I think we might just let her take this victory and leave that particular argument or discussion for another time, I think, Helen.
Okay, I mean, it was something that I mentioned last week, and when I was speaking about, like, she has strengthened up. But I will say this: she's worked very, very hard. She's a very good player. She's done well. She was playing. Remember, the girl she was playing in the final was sold to Kazakhstan. She's a Russian girl, and she herself got an awful lot of abuse for being from Russia, even though she's representing Kazakhstan. But she of course, changed citizenships in 2018. Andrew, overall, we had in the junior girls final two little Russian players, two young girls, both 15 years old. But a lot of people, I spoke with some Russian tennis people here today, and they're kind of really, let's just say, down about the sort of the prospect of developing, because they feel that there are a lot of people who are hanging around and using tennis to make stupid political statements, just as Iseult said and we've all said.
Well, the thing that troubles me the most is when you win a junior title like that, it goes one of two ways. Either your sporting ability is built up, and quite often in a negative way. We know how the world loves to build child prodigies up, and the pressure's instantly on, or it can go the other way, and the pressure gets too much. But now we're not even talking about sport quite often. We're talking about a sporting achievement, well, a moment that should be about sporting achievement, and we're talking about the political implications. We're talking about how images are going to be used and adapted. That sadly is the world we live in today. But I understand the concerns of Russian sports officials right now over the sports stars, but unfortunately, this is the reality we live in. Russian sports stars are going to find it tough, virtually no matter what official decisions are made or what happens in the world in the next 6 months, 12 months, 2-3 years, whatever it is. Russian sports stars, rightly or wrongly, simply are going to be ever so slightly, perhaps significantly tainted. The reception, their sporting achievements are always going to come, not with an asterisk, but with an addendum of this is what they stand for. What do they stand for? When in an ideal world, we shouldn't be asking that of sports stars. We shouldn't be asking them to be the figureheads, them to be the litmus test of where that country stands, where this person stands on an issue. It should be about their achievement, because that's what they are. And yet, that isn't the world we live in. So the two young girls, that should have been a kickstart to a potentially impressive career, and as spark for other youngsters coming through. You know, my own younger daughter is 9 years old. She goes to tennis lessons every week, and I would love for her to watch a young Russian girl going to another country, winning a tournament, getting better and better. But sadly, it's not going to inspire pure sporting emotions. But unfortunately, that is the world we live in. So how we go from here, how future tennis stars in Russia are going to develop their careers and prospects, it's impossible to say right now, but it's certainly not as smooth as we would like it to be.
Yeah, you say that time passes and time's a healer. So there's something that's put time passed since everything happened in February. So we're going to go to a break right now, and we'll be back with quite an interesting discussion as well on Olympic bans. So back after this. Now, in the photo here, we have the gold and bronze medalists from the delayed Olympics that were, of course, held in Tokyo 2021. It is Maria Lasitskene and Yaroslava Makuchik. Maria is from Russia, of course, but she's got a lot of a mix of blood in her, and Yaroslava, of course, is from Ukraine, from Dnipropetrovsk. Brilliant camaraderie between them. They had trained together, they had worked together, and Latsaskene, all the way to the very end, was like they were actually supporting each other and helped each other out as well. An order was sent out from Kiev. This now, again, remember 2021, do not under any circumstance take a photograph or be seen in a photograph with a Russian athlete. That was from Kiev. However, Maria went and did this. Isolt, I'll start with you. Ultimately, athletes are competing for themselves. No matter what you say, even amateur boxers, you are competing for yourself. You do get a great buzz when you have the vest on your back as an amateur international boxer, and you feel, oh, I'm fighting for my country. But at the same time, when you get in there, the bell goes, you're fighting for yourself, the same as any professional anywhere. Do you think that, the banning Russian and Belarusian athletes as well, is that going to help? Is that going to push things forward? Will it create dialogue, or is it just sort of a blanket punishment?
Of course it won't, because you're not punishing politicians. What you're essentially doing, you're not punishing decision makers. What you're doing is you're punishing people who compete in the sport. They may not necessarily even be training out of their home country. They may have most of their time otherwise overseas, but because of the way things have gone now, a lot of athletes will obviously be more homeward based. But there's a sense of, while athletes go in and train and compete individually in certain sports, they're also human. So human interaction and friends, and the ability to have people to, I suppose, as you're showing in a photograph, to have friends in your sport of choice is really important, irrespective of where they're coming from. And I think the ban on athletes as blanket bans, it detracts from so much, because it sends a message that we will blame you for what is going on above your station or above what you can control and influence, and then we will have other sports which aren't doing the same, or other athletes who are outside of Russia and competing in sports are able to do so. And perhaps I think it also is a really negative thing, in the sense that you are, by banning sports and athletics, which is or athletes from competing, in a way you're reinforcing whatever negative portrayal of how the outside world is viewing your country is being blasted on news and TV, because it's backing it up. It's like saying, well, we told you, look, you're being banned. What have you done wrong? But you're being banned from competing. So it's a really dangerous tool to put into a propaganda war as well. And I just think we need to differentiate between how different sports are viewing different athletes. And let's face it, on a lot of fronts, Russia has always been the poster child for being like targeted as the naughty child already. So banning Russia, for feck's sake, we ban Russia from everything anyway. This isn't a new thing. It's like Russia's the team that dopes. Let's never look at in-house. Let's never look nearer to home. So banning Russian athletes and Belarusians isn't a new thing, but the difficulty is we're not doing it across the board. We're targeting certain sports, we're targeting certain athletes, and we are feeding into the narrative that we don't want fed into, basically.
So, let's put it this way. I remember as a kid, and you remember as well in Ireland, when there was a ruckus every so often. You can remember this as well. You're both younger than me, but when South Africa were banned, and when people went down, under sanctions, rugby players, cyclists, Irish cyclists like Sean Kelly missed out in the Olympic Games because they went and cycled in South Africa to get to take part in a race there. I think Pat McQuaid went down there as well. So I mean, this whole thing of boycotting and banning, we've always spoken Capital Sports. Boycotts are stupid. Banning is stupid. I mean, I heard the Ukrainian Olympic chief and also Zelensky as well fed into it that if Russian and Belarusians are there, there's blood on their flag, and we're not going to go. And I was speaking
we've already stopped Russians from competing under their flag. So we're asking in the Olympics, allow them to compete as individuals. Why not do that?
Well, look, Liesl, we're speaking sense, and we love sports. That's the problem. A lot of these people hate sports. I spoke with a high-ranking Olympic Committee member last week. I'll say from Western European nation, but I'll say it's from the islands that are Britain and Ireland. I'll give that because I'll give away the person who said to me. And basically, so they're very narrative right down, as he said, if they want to start saying we're not going to turn up, and as he said, and I'll use his words, fuck them, because as he sees, he said that, and he said it very straight. He said, Putin's bad. This is wrong. Should never happen. But Jesus, he said, how are you going to try and develop sport and use sport for good if people are being told you're evils because you're from that country? Cian, I mean, there's a lot of this hype around Kerry people that we like in Ireland. We would hope that Kerry people would be just like cut adrift into the Atlantic and so on. That's not fair. It doesn't work. You're still from Kerry and you're still kind of people as well.
And I'd like to thank you for your cooperation. I'm going to leave now. But no, yeah, it's a very, very difficult one. Of course, being from Kerry, of course, it's a burden to me, of course. But taking John B. Keane's line, it's a burden to be a Kerry man. But no, it's a very, very tricky one. Just thinking about what you were speaking about there, just going back on the South African thing, that game I think it was 1970 in Dublin that caused World War III outside Lansdowne Road when somebody he was lying in front of the South African team bus they were trying to get to the game, and he was lying in front of it. It was to do with the apartheid situation at that time. And there's several different probably examples from an Irish perspective. Those two women in the early to mid 90s that refused point blank to handle South African goods, they lost their jobs, and that caused uproar in this country for a number of weeks, if not months. So it's definitely a very, very interesting topic and a very emotive topic as well. Yeah,
I remember the Dunn stores too. And
That's
I mean, do you know what
Christy Moore did a song about it.
Yeah, and I mean they were
right. YouTube.
They did the right thing for what they stood up for themselves and they made a decision and they saw it through. Okay. Mm-hmm. They said we're not going to handle the goods. Okay, fine. The economic sanctions are supposed to hit the country. The rich people, the clerks and so on, they didn't worry about that. They still had their gold, their trips around the world. One thing as well that's interesting to say about, I brought up apartheid and the whole issue like that when we were we abandoned an entire nation, regardless of colour, they were banned. And as my former archaeology professor, he passed away in a few years, John Bradley, as he said, now he went with Mary Robinson, our first female president of Ireland, and they went to Wood Quay and lay down in front of diggers that the government had got in. They're basically digging out an entirety, all the way down to the pre-Viking city of Dublin, the very centre of Dublin. They were just digging it out and destroying it, basically throwing human and bones and artifacts just on big spoil heaps, basically just dumping them. Now, as he said, there was such energy and effort put in to protect the rights of people down in South Africa, who people had never met and would never want to meet and would never even want to mix with. But yet, when it came to our own history and other things, like, and as he said, mother and baby homes, this back in the late 90s, mother and baby homes, people just ignored it. Andrew, I mean, you were speaking, you've come from with inside Russia. A lot of people are just so cheesed off with the Olympics that there was talk to having a separate Olympics, like a non-aligned Olympics, but that's not going to go. And Thomas Bach does seem to be saying, look, it's about the sport, stupid, leave it at that.
Well, I mean, my general feeling about a ban for Russian athletes, players, sports teams at the moment is it's generally quite conflicted, because we have to be realistic. Russian football teams, for example, being banned from UEFA competition, I don't think there's many people who would argue against it, simply because of, I would argue, just on a very basic health and safety level. I mean, you've got thousands and thousands of fans at events when tensions already run high in sport, regardless of who's playing. But you can't avoid that fact. I mean, much as we would like it to be only based on sport, it's just not realistic, because sport is much bigger than just itself. When it comes to when you mentioned that concept, it's a theme that I've noticed over more than just the last year within Russian sport. A lot of people are kind of fed up with the established order of things, of European football, European sport, Western-centric sport being the absolute pinnacle, when there are other areas of the world with huge amounts of people, huge amounts of passion, huge amounts of means. We have spoken before about the Russian Football Union considering and coming reasonably close to voting in favour of moving away from European football to Asian football. On an economic sense, the amount of development and cooperation that has built up in the last few years with Eastern nations, with Asian nations, it is starting to show, whatever your views on whatever is happening in sport all around the world, that there is life outside the US, there is life outside Europe. Now, what the reasons and motivations for developing those links are? Well, okay, there could be many of them. Survival, competition. We talk about giving sports stars some meaningful, tangible hope of developing some vague sense of a competitive career. Well, people will find a way if they can. And if this blanket ban that we've talked about, continues because this is what we ought to be doing, then Russian sports stars will look for an opportunity to test themselves as sports stars. And I think with the blanket ban, here's my problem. Here's where I disagree with the bans. When it is viewed and dressed up as a ban, as a moral decision, that's what I have a problem with. If they said, look, we want to help you develop competition, we want you to compete, but it's just not practical if we're being realistic with the world situation. We are worried about tensions between certain competing nationalities. I would have more time for that, but it clearly is not how it's being presented. It's being presented as a moral yardstick, and that's what sport should not be. You should be realistic, but practical, and it's not being used in a practical sense. Obviously, it's an easy way for us to score points.
Look, Isolt, I just want to come to you in 1 second on one point you just made in the chat here between us. This week, of course, there was a meeting between UEFA and the Russian Football Union that the delegation of Russia consisted of the president of the Russian Union, Dukov, and the president of or CEO of the Russian Premier League. What came out of it, well, we do know that the Euro Super Cup final, which is meant to be held in Kazan this year, was moved. So it's gone to Athens. So there you go. So if you know, again, as Andrew said, people need to play games. Isolt, you brought up a very, very good point there in our chat, saying that when we were speaking to World Cup, and when we had Nima on, we were all very open about it. We all actually said, this feels really icky, the amount of abuse and the level of abuse. And Keane, I remember bringing it up as well in the pre-World Cup show. Are we looking at that now, that we're just picking on nations? Because I remember speaking and writing articles about it, and I kept calling. I recalled Claire. Now, Keane and Issa will be happy with it. I recall Claire that, we're no longer the whipping boys of Munster. That great speech, Anthony Daly. Where Claire won a long-awaited Munster, and he said that, like, now we've won it. Now you can no longer.
That man ruined 1 year of my life in particular. I'm not over 97. Twice in 1 year he took. Anyway, but yes, I think Nima was actually, the discussion we had with Nima, Alan, was so important because it sort of challenged what, to an extent, we automatically jump to the side of. You would always jump to the side of where you are based or what you are exposed to. So, like, because in Ireland, we're very near to the US, obviously, like, not that near. We have a safe, good ocean between us, but they're close enough, and they're always fecking coming over here and just going around the place. Anyway, that being said, we're in the western side of the world, so we instantly have this presupposed notion that we should go into other countries and impose our culture on them. So when we look at the likes of Qatar, while there are obviously some huge issues, and I'm not detracting from with human rights and all of that, that is not to say that there aren't issues. But as Westerners, we don't just want to sort out the human rights issues. We'd like to go and impose Western living and all the Western cultures and assume that everyone should want to be like us and view everyone else as, and I'm using Nima, I think Nima was like, we look at and go, oh, they must be savages if they don't do what we do. And that's just, it's a horrendous lack of ability to understand culture in the first place and to understand individual choice. And I think the big problem is we just assume by looking at certain nations and putting in a ban, we have this toxic ability, and I also hate using the word toxic, that's the Americanization of my world. But we have this ability, and toxic is actually the only appropriate word, where we assume that we can almost tar everyone with the same brush. So we look at everyone and we go, do you know what will really stop the Russian-Ukrainian conflict? If we ban all the Russian athletes, because that'll show them. What it actually does is it perpetuates an idea that we will punish people where they have no contribution to what the issue is. And the reality is, when we look at football and what it is doing now in Russia, they're just going to go, or as you mentioned, the mooted idea of their own Olympics. You go, do you know what? We can't play. It's like kids in a playground. That guy over there doesn't want to play with me. It's a whole other group of other kids over there. Here I go. And do you know what? It's a big two fingers to them. Like, it's just, at some point we need to learn that we're not looking at this with a logical approach. If you want to sanction people and punish people, do it differently, but look at it with logic and don't punish people who are not directly responsible, and we are also punishing people who have come out with quite clear views that they're not in agreement with what's going on, and we're still punishing them.
Look, we saw that with just on Andrei Rublev. We played a video last week. He's getting abused. He's getting called the F homophobic word. He's like, Keane, you mentioned it. I'm going to come back to you on that as well. That he's been abused. He was one of the first people to write on a camera, "Stop the war." He came out against it. A lot of people came out. I know a whole people who are guests on the show who are still here in Russia, who are proud patriots. If you're a patriot, that's a big difference from being a nationalist. If you're a nationalist, your nation is above all others. No, if you're a patriot, you love your country. I'm a patriot. I mean, this morning, I spent a couple of hours with another Irish guy, two of us, coaching 13 different nationalities to play Gaelic football. We're going to go this summer to bring two teams from Russia, made up a total 16 different nationalities to go play for. They're playing for their team, for the love of it. But we're growing an Irish thing because we love our country. But we're not saying, do you know what, I could say Irish culture is better than theirs, but no, that's a joke. Irish food for sure is. But anyway, even though when Issa and I met, she was drinking French wine, I was drinking German beer. So like, and even worse, non-alcoholic German beer. So that's even a disgrace. But anyway, okay, I'm going to move on. Keane, I just want to come back. Something you mentioned last week, you're watching the show, of course, and you sent a message in. This kind of like stuff that Rublev was going on, and the homophobic abuse he was getting, and I mean, and it was like sensitive stuff. It was like, it's something to get under somebody's skin. How, like, I mean, you said that you'd had that thrown at you before. How devastating is it?
It was a shock. I have to be brutally honest. It was one kind of an off the cuff remark that developed into a conversation, and it shocked the life out of me. I've had the same probably thoughts over the last number of years for different reasons, but it shocked me. It happened when I was 20, so it's 12 years ago. So it really shocked me. It made me think, and it kept me thinking for a number of weeks after the conversation. Of course, I answered it immediately the way an Irish person will always answer that sort of question. Oh God, no. And but then for nearly 2 or 3 months after that, it was in the back of the mind. So definitely struck a chord with me last Sunday when that was brought up.
Yeah, it's and I've heard this. I've heard this. And I've said it before. I remember watching a Dundalk match live in Moscow. I think it was in Moscow watching Dundalk were playing, and at one moment complete silence in Oriel Park, and a shout comes from an unmistakable Dundalk accent like "Fuck off, you quail," and I'm like, oh God. And there was silence, and the commentators were like, oh, I think it was Con Murphy, said, oh, well, sorry about that. This is the okay. Look, we're going to take a very short break. I mean, Isha, sorry, you will come back in.
I'm just going to say actually this, because obviously last weekend I was at the boxing. We had the thing where during the press conference in the build-up, and I don't know if you mentioned this, there was some almost really, I don't know if we'd even go so far as to say, like, basically Liam Smith was insinuating as if it was an insult. Yeah, so he was insinuating as an insult, which is really, really worrying, that obviously that he was insinuating that Chris Eubank Jr. was gay. And I assumed, I don't know why, but in the back of my head, Manchester is a very gay-friendly city. So I assumed when we got to Manchester that there would be some semblance of anger in some quarters of the crowd about what could be perceived as being homophobic build-up. Like, I was shocked and disappointed that people were dismissing it, because I was talking with people around me, and they were like, and it was almost a blatant kind of going, yeah, well, maybe he's hit the nail on the head. And I was like, but you don't try and out someone. Like, it was and it wasn't good. It was not a good look, because that's the insinuation by using it in a press conference is suggesting that there's something wrong, because why else are you bringing it up the way you did?
This is exactly what we spoke about last week. Myself and Andrews discussed that. It's been used, and you hear that for a woman. And we said it before, if you're a woman and you're lesbian, you're tough, you're a dyke, you're butch. If you're a gay man, you're effeminate, you're weak, you're soft, you're shite. We heard a former Irish international saying that there's no rugby players who are gay because of their hairdressers. I'm paraphrasing him to a degree, but that's what he said, correct? That's what a former Irish international, Neil Francis, said. No.
Well, I prefer not to listen to anything Neil Francis says under any circumstances.
There's some good things that he's done. I have to say this. I have to say there's good things about Neil's, but that was just dumb. But that I've heard that. I wrote about it as well. And a gay footballer who was here in Russia playing for a major Moscow club, and with his partner, no one cared. They all accepted who he was and how he lived his life, and they got on well. Like, his teammates and their wives would go over to his house and. I said to him, like,
we now have out and proud rugby players in Ireland who are at a senior professional level with Leinster, and I hope they someday have to sit at a table with Neil Francis and ask him if he wants anything done with his hair.
But listen, if you even think about it, Leinster's nickname is the Lady Boys. Right? There's two different ones here. I mean, people, and look, I'm boy, well, they're kind of not really men. So again, when we think about it, the banter, that's mild, but when it kind of like hammers down and it feeds down, and I said this even, I tweeted before last, when it was actually, 8 years since he did it, or no, yes, 8 years, when Leo Varadkar, the Irish Prime Minister, Taoiseach, came back from Florida in a hurry, came out and said, okay, I'm a gay man, and so on. And I still think it was objectionable that he used that at a moment when he's going to get fired as Minister of Health. However, it also helped a lot of people. It did. There's no two ways about it. It did. It led a lot of people who are at his age, in late 30s or older, say, okay, if he is, so I'm okay. And also as well, and I hammer down this that if you save one kid's life, that's the most important thing. Who didn't feel alone. So yeah. Okay, we're going to do a very, very short break. One thing that Archie said, he said that, Keane, you look 16, you have to check your passport. So, you look past your bedtime. Sorry. Arthur, thank you very much for that. So on that note, from Tiernan Oak, we'll go out to a break really, really quick. I'm back after this with, a final rough 20 minutes. Now, the world of football was shocked last week. Well, it's always shocked every single week, especially now with the transfer window coming up and not a whole lot moving around, especially not players. The big one, of course, was Juventus getting the crap bet out of them by the Italian Football Association. Of course, Juventus are one of the drivers, the absolute drivers behind the European Super League. That came out little by little by little. And a friend of our show, Tariq Panja, of course, spoke about that with us as well. Wherever they got not only beaten today by Monza 2-0 at home, but they also got a 15-point deduction to throw them down to 10th place in the table. They were docked, as I said, 15 points. What's going to happen to them now? We're going to speak with just 1 second. Of course, this is a team who've already been relegated before for match fixing and so on. But they're 27 points away now from, well, actually more now, from Napoli. Remember, 20 years ago, they were done for match fixing and they were relegated in 2006 from Italy's Serie A. They were docked points this time for financial irregularities and false accounting. It sounds a bit Father Ted Isolt. Quickly, just round off, how does this play out in the court of law, and have they got a chance to appeal?
Well, they also had some high-profile resignations in November from their board initially, so obviously they knew this was coming down the tracks. And financial irregularities, let's not just gloss it over and go a bit of money, as you said, Father Ted, resting in an account. The problem was money wasn't resting where it should have been. And obviously financial crimes, I hate to presuppose what the outcome will be, but anything on a financial level, obviously you're risking criminal sanction here. Look, Juventus aren't they're not new to this game of having issues in the back room and in the background, and obviously they are almost at this stage professionals at coming back from serious points deductions. I just think if this is going on at Juve, what other clubs will be next to be hit? Because obviously it's a fairly in-depth investigation. Financial irregularities require a huge level of forensic accounting before you will bring it onto this level. Where do we see Juve going from here? I would expect at some point, probably not in the immediate near future, but we will see criminal sanctions for financial irregularities. If they're on the scale that has come out in the media, someone will need, and probably a scapegoat, a very, very nice junior person who once looked at the accounting software will be the person who goes in front of the courts. But that's the reality of it. And unfortunately, like we've seen it with other clubs, and the reality here is that there needs to be stern sanctioning, because they're not dealing with small sums of money, and Juventus is a machine in the sense of it's a huge corporate entity. It's not just people associate football clubs. They look at football clubs and think of it only as 11 men on the field. Football clubs are huge businesses, and they also have huge impacts on their local community. So if something goes horribly wrong with a football club in an area, that has a huge negative connotation for all the other businesses that go alongside it. So Juventus, yes, they've dropped down a number of points, but if they'd been relegated 2 or 3 divisions, then all of a sudden there's a huge knock-on interest to who's coming to see games and everything like that. So I think we can all dismiss it and go, oh, Juve again. But financial irregularities on this scale are a huge criminal issue. It goes to corporate governance as well. So you have a huge level of different factors to be considered here. And I think from Juve's perspective, at this stage, not being the first time they have had such a huge scandal, clearly the clean out the last time was not good enough. And this needs to be root and branch systematically, rip up the copybook and say anyone who has been involved in the corporate governance to now, it's very difficult for companies to do this. And I would just say outside of the football context, you often hear when a company has to get rid of a number of directors or people in charge, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go down a very brief legal perspective. The one fear they always have is you need to keep someone who you feel is clean there, who knows who can interpret what's on the books, and someone who actually understands the running of a business. Because if you get rid of everyone, it can be very difficult. But in this instance, we've got to a stage where Juve are so scandal marred that they need an entirely new group of people to come in and go, Don't care if you don't know what happened in that book. No one should know what happened there. We just need to move forward.
Yeah, you've been voted for Prime Minister of Ireland, so Taoiseach, our first female Taoiseach. Yeah, I'd be very happy. I'd vote for that. Of course, one issue, Eastland, I'm not going to let you answer it. One of the guys who got one of the longest bans of all, Partizzi, he is now working at Spurs. Andrew, I mean, now the Italian disease has spread to England.
We'll take it.
Well, yes. I mean, look, the bans that have been handed out, my understanding, you may correct me on this, but the bans have been handed out so far just from the Italian Federation, but they want it to be extended to UEFA and FIFA activities. In other words, so they can't work anywhere. And I think Paratici is going to see his activity curtailed somewhat. Whether he's sort of be happy or not with that, whether she's happy with the job he's done since moving to London is another matter. But Juventus are a mess is not even the right word. It's an orchestrated mess in one sense. I think, and I've suspected for a while now, that football bubble, it's a matter of time before it properly, well and truly bursts. Financial fair play is, I think, one of the most damaging things to happen to football in a long time, because it's like so many things you can relate it to. If you can adopt the rules in your favour and say, well, look, we're abiding by financial fair play. We want financial fair play. We've seen what Chelsea have done, signing up players to 7, 8, 9-year contracts to spread their value out over that period of time so that they can technically fit in with current financial fair play rules. It's making an absolute joke, but it simply cannot keep on going like this, because there's a finite amount of money in the world and sponsorship. And Juventus, we know full well, obviously, were the driving forces behind the European Super League, and we've seen them trying to push again for that. They're not going to be quiet until that happens, because then they're covered. Then the relegation to Serie B, or even lower, if it were to happen, won't happen. That is what they're going to push for, and eventually it's going to happen. I don't see any other way for these ridiculous behemoths that are running football to survive. Juventus is inflating these transfer fees and values of their players. Well, look, I think on a certain level, virtually every club will try and do something similar. They'll try and spread out the value over instalments, and it's when you hear a transfer fee nowadays, say this player's gone for 50 million. It's that number 50 is virtually impossible to interpret. What do you mean by 50? Is it instalments? Is it performance-related bonuses? Is it amortization? Yeah. Exactly. It's like there's so many ways to muddy the waters of what a number means nowadays that it is possible for Juventus to do this for I assume amount of time. So,
Cian, now that Kerry FC are coming into the League of Ireland, the first semi-professional football club in Ireland, are we going to see Billy Dennehy, who's now, of course, the first ever manager of the team? Is it going to be ructions down the kingdom?
No, I think they won't get into financial trouble yet. Anyway, it might take a bit of time, but it's great to see it. It's fantastic to see League of Ireland football back in Kerry. I know a small village close to me tried to get involved a couple of years ago, Lizzelton Rovers, and it just didn't work out. They managed to get into, I think it was an underage league, under 21 at that stage, for about a season or 2 seasons. That didn't work out, but it's great to see football back in Kerry. Of course, an interesting thing straight away when Kerry FC was launched during the week, the first thing that an ex-Kerry footballer, Sean O'Sullivan, was worried about was, is this going to take away from the GAA and start filtering players towards Kerry FC playing in Mount Hog Park and Tralee rather than heading for Ossenstack Park or Fitzgerald Stadium. So it's definitely something that Kerry GAA ex-players are worried about even at this early stage.
Well, I mean, in one way, it'd be better if they're going to play League of Ireland than go down to the AFL. So, getting into Australia. So there is that. Very, very quickly, because we're running out of time, and Eastern needs to go in to greet her dad for his birthday. So a very, very important thing that we have to run through very, very quickly before I come into the last question. I better put it up, okay? I better put it up because do I have it? I don't even know if I have it here. I probably don't. I don't have it, so I'm going to have to run past that then. I was going to ask you about the whole ban on Kilcool Cross, but I'm going to put that aside because let's let it play out because it could be a little bit difficult as well. Another one
That'll be a good topic for next week because they'll have had the hearing, hopefully.
Agreed. You can all just like watch this and just explain what happened.
All good, mate. All good.
I'm totally
Don't worry about it.
seriously.
Well, mate, that's nice. That's fucking. We could have.
The video is not playing. It's not playing?
No.
It played for me, yeah.
It played for you?
It's all good. It's all good, he said.
Yeah.
I'll try it one more time because I can't see it.
Either can I.
All good, mate. All good.
I'm totally
Don't worry about it.
seriously.
Well, mate, that's nice. That's fucking. We could have been dead there, mate. Look, that guy's at the cream of me, boy. Yeah. Yeah. Jesus
We were
Christ.
so close to a victory for the Darwinian
I'm getting away
project.
with my life there, boys, yeah?
Do you want to?
No, I don't give a bollocks, mate. All good, all good. I'm here. What's your name, my man?
Nick Dimley.
Nick, bro. Nick's had to smack me in the car with his car. He had the bike in the back. Wasn't there time.
So that was Conor McGregor. He got run down on the street. I
Did
feel.
did he just become even more Irish just on that video? I mean, I couldn't understand half of what he's saying now, and I don't know if he's playing up the camera a little bit there. Like,
No,
That was a Darwinian moment where we came so close to just sorting things out in one go. That man, like, put your foot in the accelerator, pet. Clearly, he didn't realise who it was.
I mean, in one way, it was like because you're standing there, you look at this guy who can beat people up, and you're going, "Oh shit! I hit my car." You know, I'd be worried. I'd be like, "Okay, get into the car and drive off." But he took it very well. I mean, he got bounced
Yeah.
off the road. And
I don't want to suggest that perhaps he took it so well because of what might be in his system that he bounced off the road. Like he's well able to endure a lot, I'd say.
This is what because before I ask last two questions, I have to play this one, and I have to. I'm laughing just thinking because I'll be famous.
Da 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 da! It's the motherfucking day of the.
Okay, I'll play that again. I'll play it again because
Da 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 da! It's the motherfucking day of the.
I am so sorry. Oh god. It's just such a great.
I'm just glad we have a solicitor with us.
Right, guys. So now we're going to move on to the football transfer section where we have a top player we would all like.
I'm so
Alan,
sorry.
who would you like
Please
to
forgive
come
me.
to West Ham?
Because I saw that always immediately after, and I was like, "Oh God, that's brilliant! That just is."
Alan, focus.
Yes.
West Ham. Who do you want? One name.
well played, Isla. Yes.
Not good. Oof, okay.
Phil Jones. He wants Phil Jones for a bit of experience.
You know what,
at the back.
actually, I was thinking for West Ham, there's no one to buy in that could actually do anything in the club. I would, I tried to think who
Would
could
you
they
get rid of
who?
Damien Rice and just let him go?
I think at this stage, yeah. He's playing footsie with Arsenal. I'd let him go.
In the words of Elsa from Frozen, let him go. And Cian, would you take him?
Well, I mightn't take Damien Rice, the singer, but I would take
Or not
Declan
Damien,
Rice.
Jesus, Declan.
I just want to say,
I'm worried
I could have
about
sworn I
me
just
too.
heard that. Yeah.
I will justify it by saying I have
Like a
Dancing with the
cannonball
Stars
in
in
the
the
midfield.
background. So
Okay.
Cannonball, nice reference. So I've got Paul Brogan dancing in the background.
Oh God.
I'd happily take Declan Rice.
We have 55 minutes of top-class sporting discussion, and as per usual, the last 2 minutes we've descended into utter idiocy again.
Man United. Who do
Okay,
you want?
I'll tell you who I would take. I would take Declan Rice. I would.
Okay.
No, actually, in all seriousness, seriously, I would like Manchester United to sign Moises Caicedo because we were very close to signing him before he joined Brighton. He clearly wants to leave the club. He's still young, and he is absolutely out of this world. Casemiro and him in midfield would be an unbeatable pair. I mean, if you want to throw in Harry Kane as well, I'll take him too. So I'll say Declan Rice from West Ham. I'll take Harry Kane from Spurs, and then with title winners.
We're not letting Kane play until he signs a contract. That's my theory. So it'll basically mean he can only break the record if he signs on the dotted freaking line.
Well, look, I will say that I would love to get John Egan, because he played well today, and he also made Ryan, what you call him, the good-looking fellow from Canada, made him cry from Wrexham. So I'm going to, we had a question in, actually, a couple of people. Frank, okay, just quick question for all of you. Okay, starting with Keane. Who's going to buy Everton?
Jim Radcliffe.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, Andrew.
Actually, that's not a bad shout, because I don't think he is going to buy United. So Ratcliffe's got the money, he wants to buy a club. Why not?
Yeah.
Diesel? I really don't know, because I think the negotiations with the owner, our current owner, is going to be absolutely shambolic.
Yeah.
I think that's the difficulty. I think you can't. You're going to have to wait till the summer, and the reality is, who knows where they're going to be this summer, and where they're going next year. Mike Ashley, feck it, Mike Ashley. I'm just going with it. I'm throwing it out there. If I'm right, I'm right.
By the way, just so Andrew knows, Caicedo, he is being chased by Arsenal as well. They're going, if they don't get him, they go with Rice. So they'll get Caicedo for 80 or Rice for 50. That's kind of what
for
Steve
50.
Kane, yeah.
West Ham won't sell for 50.
Well, with add-ons, maybe, who knows? Like,
well.
Final one. I know this is a strange one. Okay, Cheltenham. They're inviting fans that you can be buried at the race course. Now, this is a true thing. Okay, that is the truth. Strange one. So I'm going to ask you all, if you had a sporting place to be buried at, and there's an awful answer to a just a minute quiz as well from Larry Gogan that I just remember right now, involving an Irish presenter. Isolt, where would it be?
I would be obviously quite clearly right down the smack bang middle line of Semple Stadium.
That's the uncovered section. You're that
No. I'd like to be in the centre, and I'd like there to be a mound.
A what? A
mound.
This is very precise.
So like I don't want it to be like a small thing that would be unintrusive. No, I want them to know, and I want the players, instead of having the ball thrown in where they're all on level playing field, 2 players are up on a little mound with the referee, and like it's hell for leather. Yeah, that's what I'd like. Or look, worst case scenario, you could probably just put me in Uzik's back garden.
I'm sure Brian's happy hearing that in the background. Okay, Keane.
Has to be Thomond Park.
Oh, okay. So will the players have to come out and salute you to genuflector?
No, absolutely not. Just incinerate me and spread me at their leisure.
But listen, then you end up having sweaty flankers. And I did say flankers, not the word with W. Flankers from Leicester or from Northampton or from Racing 92, sweating over you.
It doesn't bother me, because they feel here at home that that's actually going to probably happen to me. I'll probably drop dead in a rugby pitch, most likely in Thomond Park. So if that's to happen, happily.
If Andrew says Old Trafford, surely a lot of people already go there to have their hopes and dreams die. So
Andrew.
Is that coming from somebody who's struggling to hold on to Harry Kane and the top 4? No, I wouldn't want to. There's so much glory and dreams around Old Trafford. I wouldn't want to be overshadowed. And like he sort of said, to be fair, what is the point in having something that's just fades into the background? You want to stand out. So I think I would actually have to say there's a perfect patch just around the back of the Vostochny Tribuna at the Geolog Stadium, which is absolutely tailor-made to me, because fans walk outside, that's when they're enjoying the moment. And hopefully, probably, I won't see them win the title before I'm buried in the ground there anyway, so something to make me remember.
Be buried in Wimbledon. I've seen another, I'm trying to see what the name is here. It's an email. Oh, sorry, it's Casey. Casey says, Old Trafford. Okay, so Old Trafford for Casey. Okay, I'm going to have to do this one more time, and then I'll say why. So this is 10 seconds. So just here we go.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking day of the.
Okay, we left that through. However, it reminded me of this. You'll all remember this.
Sorry.
I played that was on a loop for some reason on my telephone, and I used to sit just laughing. And Tim said to me, "Why are you laughing at Dad? Like the poor girl hurt her head." I'm like, "Exactly." That's okay.
Alan Moore laughing at concussions. On that note,
Yeah. Okay, it is 5 minutes past the hour. So, of course, Liesl, Bengals or Chiefs tonight?
Bengals 11:30. Look, it seems illogical, but feck it, didn't we make it to the Super Bowl last year? Miracles happen. It wasn't a fluke. Trapping
Okay.
Joe Burrows in Cincinnati worked.
Okay, Keane, Bengals or Chiefs?
Bengals.
Andrew?
Well, I'm going to have to say Chiefs to be different.
Okay, and of course, the other divisional playoff, or final, I should say, is San Francisco, Philadelphia. Starting off with Andrew. Andrew, who are you going for, San Francisco or Philadelphia?
I'll be honest, I haven't been following closely enough, but I'm going to say San Francisco.
Okay, Keane?
2 for San Francisco. So
Liesl?
Philadelphia, just to be different.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. On that note, thank you very much, Keane McGibney, Andrew Flint, and Lisa Cody. Have a lovely week this week.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us, boss.
All right. So we will go out into the good night, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you all for being with us this evening. And until next week, take care of yourselves and, of course, take care of each other.